If you look fast, you might be able to see a little sunshine, but it's one of those days on the 12th day of August whereas my mother used to say, there's enough blue sky up there to patch a Dutchman's pants, a big Dutchman. But we never know when the rain is going to come again. This is an occasion, though, that Hometown Cable and Calvin and myself wouldn't want to miss, because we're at the historic Wilcox Dock in Plattsburgh. We've done a number of shows giving you the history of the Wilcox family and this dock, and now, as part of the Quadra-Centennial activities, we are entertaining the Day Peckinpaugh and some other great boats that have been around at Lake Champlain and the Canal system in New York for a long, long time. You heard us first talk about it with our good friend Captain Frank Pabst about a year ago on his front lawn on Cumberland Head. Well, it's transpired and we're here. And I've just met Tim McCormick for the first time. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How did you get involved with this anyway?
Well, it's actually through the Adirondack Young Professionals. Jen LaFontaine, who's the chair of the Quadra-Centennial Committee for the City of Plattsburgh, contacted me. And being during the work week, wasn't able to get many people from the group to be involved.
I can understand that.
But I felt it was a historic time, and it was an honor to be asked, so I decided to take the lead.
Did you do a little studying on the Day Peckinpaugh and these other boats, so you knew what you were talking to people about?
I have done a little bit, very little. Went on the boat yesterday and checked out the website. So yeah, it's great. It's a 1921 freighter that used to haul cement, iron, coal up and down. You can actually go inside the boat into where they used to keep all the cargo and see a little, not sure the technical term, but a little trolley system that would push the cargo out of the boat, and they'd be unload cement within 14 hours.
It's a lot bigger than the Lois McClure, which is right over behind us, Tim, over our shoulder, and we've done a tour of that one too. The history of shipping and boating on Lake Champlain and the Canal system is tied in closely with the history of New York State. And the Quadra-Centennial covers the whole corridor from here all the way down through the Hudson River and beyond to New York City. So it's appropriate that we have this going on here today. Of course, the tug, the Urger, is here. I love tugs, don't you?
Oh, they are. They're great little work boats.
Yeah, we remember all the little children's books when we were kids, and there was always Tommy the Tug or somebody there. So that's a great boat. So we got a regular flotilla here, don't we, Tim?
Definitely, and actually just over your shoulders, we also have the boats for the CBCBC to kind of get an entire picture of all the boats on the lake.
Oh yeah, behind us. That's right too. Right here on Share. Oh yeah. Calvin's got the raincoat on the Hometown Cable camera today because we just, over the last half hour, we've been trying to avoid the raindrops. The first mistake he made was parking his car right in the middle of a deep puddle. We're going to interview a lot of good people here today. Meanwhile, you're going to be confined mostly to the parking lot.
I will be. I'll be the bad person telling people they can't park here and where they can park.
We really appreciate you sending that note. I'm delighted that we knew about the Day Peckinpaugh and planned on being here ahead of time, and I know this is going to be a great show. Thanks, Tim, for all your hard work.
Not a problem. Thank you guys for coming down, and I hope everyone enjoys the exhibits.
You know we will. Keep smiling.
Thanks.
I got coffee. You
Who? Yeah, Frank says I got coffee, and you don't. Captain Frank Pabst, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Gordy. It's a pleasure to see you and Cal here.
We were sitting on your front lawn a long time ago, and you told me about the Day Peckinpaugh, and I said, what the heck is the Day Peckinpaugh?
And here we is.
Isn't this amazing? What
Fantastic.
a story.
And, you know, it's so great to see it from planning stages to fruition. And thanks to the Canal Corp and the New York State and United States, they made the money available to make this happen. 2 weeks ago, this was a dead ship. 2 weeks ago, this you wouldn't have, you sent it to the scrapyard. Johnny Callahan, the skipper, and Jim Brennan, the engineer, and the whole crew got together, and they got paint. They've been clipping stuff off the deck that was essential to the, when it was transporting product, but it's a tripping hazard now. So they've been cleaning stuff off, and it's a work in progress. But what a beautiful work in progress.
And the fact that it was going to be here today was not a foregone conclusion when you and I talked a long time ago. It was kind of a dream.
Is there anything in New York State that's a foregone conclusion?
But it's important for a lot of reasons that we're going to mention over and over and over again. There just aren't any more like this around.
This is the last aardvark. And at one time there were 100 ships like this, more or less, plying the waters of New York State. And they built this boat to fit the canal. When you bring this into a lock, you got precious little space on either side or off the stern to close the lock doors. They made it just right so it just fits. So this carried the maximum amount of cargo that was available to move through the locks.
And carried a lot of different kinds of things over the years from 1921 on, huh?
This boat in particular hauled grain, it hauled coal, it hauled bulk cement. And then during the Second World War, it acted as a supply ship to those ships in New York Harbor that were anchored out waiting to come in.
It's gone through a lot of changes. First of all, it's gone through several different names. Then it went through a lot of changes. And then, like you said, in the Second World War, it kind of got a new skin for a new mission.
Well, after the Second World War, in 1946, they hauled it into the Todd shipyards in Brooklyn, a place I was familiar with.
Oh, yes.
And they rebuilt it. So she got a good facelift in 1946, but when, it doesn't sound like long because I was there, but that's quite a few years ago.
I used to remember as a little kid going up and down the Hudson and looking at all the old derelict warships.
Yeah.
Right near, not far from West Point. And when the day Peckinpaugh was retired, in Erie, PA, I think.
Erie, Pennsylvania, yeah.
Everybody thought that was going to be the end.
Well, she was destined to go to the shipbreakers. And New York State Museum became aware of it, and we became aware of the fact of its unique status that it is the last of the Mohicans. It's the last motor ship that plied the waters of Lake Champlain and New York State.
Yeah. So it was important that we get this here today.
Getting it here, showing it around, and I had encouraged 3 years ago when I first became aware of what might happen, that they have each town's historian put an easel up down in the hold and tell the history of each town and make it a field trip. Bring it up here in the fall of the year when the students can get on board and appreciate it. You can talk to a student in a classroom and you can show pictures in the classroom, but when you bring them here and you show them the reality, here on board this ship that was once a working ship and now is a display, this is something that gets through to them. They remember that.
And it's far different, as you know, to come aboard as a youngster or even an oldster as we are and see it in person and touch things than it is to read about it in a book, especially after it's been scrapped somewhere.
Well, the thing that's really interesting is we were opening up the ship this morning. I was talking to one of the people that had come on board, and they were rolling the hatches back. And you've got these solid steel hatches with this ratchet device that moves them back. And he puts it down. He says, "Boys, as you can tell, that's something that was made in the USA."
Isn't that amazing?
Yep, solid, and it was built in 1921, and it's still going strong.
Here it is.
I couldn't believe how smooth this was. The chief engineer, Jim Brennan, has those engines purring like kittens.
Really good?
Oh,
you can appreciate that. Did you get to take the wheel for a while?
I steered it for quite a bit.
Did you really?
Yeah, and it was a thrill. Not accustomed to the length of the boat. My first hour on the wheel, my wake looked like a snake with cramps.
I love it.
I was right rudder, left rudder, right rudder, left rudder, and eventually straightened out. I got used to the idiosyncrasies of the boat, and I think the boat got used to me.
I think that's great. So you got a symbiotic relationship going there.
Indeed.
Well, we're delighted to have you here and to have the day Peckinpaugh here, and we're going to take a tour. We're going to talk to John and lots of other people.
Let me see
today.
if I can't get John's attention over here, Gordy.
We'll get him and we'll talk to him. Thanks, Frank.
Good deal.
Gene McKay. The sun is out. We're smiling. We were deluged just a few minutes ago, and may it stay this way for the rest of the tour here this weekend. What's your title?
I'm the Director of Communications and Outreach, and I work with Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor.
But isn't it a neat thing to do in this day and age?
It's a very neat thing to do, especially when the sun is shining.
With the Quadra-Centennial, with all the special events. I must tell you, I've known Captain Frank Pabst since we were both much thinner and much younger. And we talked about the day Peckinpaugh back in the day when there was no hope whatever that this would happen. But
here we are.
you have to start with a dream, and here we are today. How has this process been a fun one for you?
It has been a fun one, and I came on after the dream started because I've been with the Erie Canalway for just a couple of years.
Oh.
So already the boat had been rescued. So I'm coming in kind of in what I guess is the middle of the process, really, because I think as you walk around today, you see that it's still a work in progress, which makes it kind of neat for people that get on board.
We're so impressed to have it here today, to see this beautiful lake of ours, which we dearly love
Beautiful.
for all the obvious reasons and many others. And have you spent any time up here? You're normally from the Hudson Valley, right?
I am. So we're a little outside of our territory because the Erie Canalway stretches on the canal system of New York State. So it goes from Whitehall all the way out to Buffalo. On the Erie Canal, so it includes Champlain, Erie, Cayuga-Seneca, and Oswego canals. So I don't get to spend that much time up on Lake Champlain.
You know, you've just made a good point without even realizing it. You're such a good promoter. This canal system is a wonderful thing for parents to teach their kids about. And bring grandma and grandpa when you take that trip and go the full length of the canal system and stop at these little communities and stand there. Close your eyes and reflect on what was, because it was such a powerful force in commerce in our state.
Yeah, and it's incredible when you travel it, because I think a lot of people don't even know that you still can travel the Erie Canal.
Oh, sure.
You can still see the canal system, and you see the way it used to be and the way it is now, and it's fascinating to compare. And some of the communities are changed very little from the way they were in the 1800s, and others have changed a lot. There's the Erie Canalway bike path, which runs almost the whole length of the Erie Canal. So that's a nice way to travel and see the small towns, because you're going on the old towpath and you're going at a pace that's more similar to what those canal boats would have been like. And then, of course, you can also take a boat or come by car and stop off. There's a lot of great places to see.
So many great photographs, great literature, great music, connected with the Erie Canal and our other canals and Lake Champlain, as it's all connected. And without them, we probably wouldn't, I know we wouldn't be standing here today.
That's right.
And this is what I would call a modern remnant compared to some of the old canal boats. And we've done a lot of shows talking with the old canal people whose families plied long before the Peckinpaugh was made in 1921. But this marks the end of an era. This boat is the last one of its kind. Terrific, huh?
Right. Well, which is why it's so great that it was able to be saved as the first one that was ever built, and then the last one that remains. And I think that part of the story of this boat is what the future is too. That it's the last, but in a way, it's, to me, the beginning of a new era on the canal, because this boat has a new job. And so instead of hauling grain or coal or cement, it's really got a new mission and a new life, and so it's going to continue.
Like this replica canal boat of the Lois McClure, you've been through it, I'm sure. Isn't it the neatest in the world? To think how those families traveled together back in the day.
And then you see that the Lois McClure, and then you see this vessel, and you can immediately tell this isn't a family boat. So you see the whole shift in the canal from the family business to this is big business. This is a different kind of an era, as you said, of the 1900s on the canal instead of the 1800s on the canal.
So what, besides talking to the likes of me and Calvin, what's a day like for you?
Well, as a communications person for Erie Canalway, planning for the voyage is pretty hectic because we're working with all of the communities that are sponsoring the boat. So we're coordinating with them to make sure the shoreside logistics are in place, that any festivals and events are well publicized. We're updating our website to let people know what's happening. We're writing interpretive material for our volunteers and our staff. We're training people who are going to be on board. So when these voyages take place, there's quite a lot of work to do.
I'm surprised they didn't hand you a paintbrush.
They practically
very fresh paint. on the day
They probably would have
Can you
had I
imagine how
offered.
many gallons it took to make it look like this? Just open the hatch and look what it looked like a very short time ago.
And they're working on it still.
Of course.
The crew is taking a short break, but they'll be here painting later. They'll be working on the engine room. And then after the voyage is finished, they'll do a great deal of work as well.
But Gene, thank goodness for those people who have dreams, huh?
Absolutely. I hope you'll meet John Callahan, who really had a dream for
John
this.
went to get a dry shirt. He was a little bit
that's
mad.
good.
He swore it was from the rain, but we noticed that he was working pretty hard, so there might have been a little perspiration in there.
You know, part of the story too, Cal, I think that people may want to think about in terms of dreams is, here's Sam de Champlain and Henry Hudson, who were looking for the waterway west, and that was their dream, and they didn't find it. They found this.
And they never met each other.
They never met each other.
They were.
But now here we are on this boat, which in a way to me represents the working canal that fulfilled that part of their dream, which connected the Atlantic with the inland of the continent, and really opened up the United States and made it what it is today. So that's an important part of the story.
You are the perfect person for your job. You're a wonderful spokesperson. We hope to tour this great ship and talk to John and all the other people aboard. And we hope you have a good couple of days up here and a wonderful journey wherever life takes you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It'll be
Gene.
great. Okay.
This guy's been so busy since we came aboard. John Callahan, how are you?
I'm great, Gordy. Great to see you.
Just been terrific too. The sunshine is out now that we get a chance. You got a dry shirt on. You're a new guy.
I've got a dry shirt. I'm still. I am a new guy. No better looking than the old guy, but here I am anyway.
That's my line too.
Yeah.
It's great to have you here today. Great to have this boat here today. We've looked forward to this day with great anticipation. As I said before, Captain Frank Pabst is a dear friend of mine for 40 or 50 years. We dive together. We've been through experiences that we ain't going to mention today.
I don't think probably the statute of limitations is yet to expire.
God, we can hope so.
Okay.
But in any case, we're here today, and when he first mentioned the name Dave Peckinpaugh, I had no clue. I remembered vaguely that there was a Yankee manager many years ago named Peckinpaugh, and when I started to learn about this boat, I learned that his brother was Dave Peckinpaugh.
Absolutely.
So how did you get involved with this? I know you're the project manager as well as being the captain of this here boat.
Yes, sir, Gordy. I first got involved in the Dave Peckinpaugh project in 2005 when a group was formed to sort of rescue, literally from the scrap heap, this storied vessel, the first of her kind, the last of her kind, a real link to our maritime heritage in New York State and beyond. And so in 2005, the New York State Canal Corporation, the New York State Museum, the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor, and the Canal Society of New York State came together to go out to Erie, Pennsylvania, and save this thing from the scrap heap. And it's been a sort of an odyssey ever since, where we brought it back to the canal that year, been struggling to identify funding and really bring the dream of having a floating museum, bringing the New York State Museum to folks all across New York State and beyond who can't necessarily get to the museum, bringing that dream to fruition, and now we're able to do it. It's great to be here in Plattsburgh. We're very excited to be part of the celebration of the Quadra-Centennial and part of that legacy of 400 years of maritime history and progress.
When you first looked at her in Erie, did you say, oh my gosh, what are we getting into?
Well,
she was pretty rough at that time.
It's the same thing I say every day when I get up now. It's true. You have to look beyond sort of the rusting steel and the scaling paint and really have a vision. And I'm so fortunate to be involved with people like Carmela Mantello at the New York State Canal Corporation, Frank Dean at the time, and now Beth Sumeka at the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor, Craig Williams and Cliff Siegfried at the museum, Tom Grasso, the Canal Society, all having the vision to look at a rusty hunk of gray steel and say, this is really something special. So it wasn't just, vision wasn't required just on my part, but a lot of people to say, we can do something here that is unique, that is compelling, that can put people in touch with their maritime heritage in a real, tangible, visceral way. And because that vision was there, here we are today in Plattsburgh, New York, on the Quadra-Centennial Legacy Tour with these great other historic vessels. It's really amazing.
It is indeed a floating museum. How hard was it to make it seaworthy, get the engines going?
Ask me at the end of the trip.
Are they running okay now?
They're running great.
You've
They're
got
running
two big diesels?
two just marine grade Detroit diesels, 6110 Detroit engines. All our auxiliary engines are Detroit's General Motors products as well. Everything's running great. The chief engineer, the whole crew, has done a phenomenal job. We're very fortunate to have some exceptional people working on this, to have gotten some incredible support in the form of assistance from the New York State Canal Corporation in gearing up to make this trip, and very fortunate to have gotten the support from Congressman Maurice Hinchey, who appropriated the money for this journey. So there's so many people coming together to make this a reality, and we're just very happy to be a part of it.
And for this Quadra-Centennial year, you're going to touch the lives of a lot of little kids and medium-aged people and old folks like me, and make a big impression. And that's got to be almost a dream come true. What's your background, John?
Well, my maritime background is with the Coast Guard. I spent 4 years active with the Coast Guard, 12 years in the reserves. Came back home to historic scenic Waterford, New York. Ran tugboats for a while, went down and worked administratively with the New York State Canal Corporation for a while. And so back on the water, it feels great to be back on the water. And it is so special, Gordy, to be able to touch those lives. We want to engage kids, but also their parents, their grandparents. Some of these kids have never seen a boat this size up on this part of the lake, but maybe their grandparents, their parents they remember it. So we're going to put those families in touch. Now we have something contextual that they can all relate to, as far as why their community is where it is, why the industries that sprang up around this region sprang up the way they did. So it's a real treat. It's a real privilege to be able to do that.
And to think that she's 88 years old.
Yeah, actually, people sometimes say she's looking a little rough, and I just say, well, I hope I'm looking this good at this age.
Hope I'm still floating when I'm 88.
Roger that. I mean, she's really all there. We're so fortunate to have a $3.1 million federal stimulus grant to do the capital rehabilitation work that really needs to be done, some hull work, replacing some of the ballast piping, just get her completely ready to go to begin a second life as a floating museum. So we're put together sufficiently for this trip, but we don't want to just celebrate the Quadra-Centennial year. We want this to be a legacy project moving forward the next 30, 40 years, and to do the things necessary to make sure that we can do that for many, many years to come. Get back up in Plattsburgh again.
I hope you do. Now, this is your dedicated job for a while?
Yeah, I'm a project coordinator on the Day Peckinpaugh project, so putting the pieces together on the capital rehabilitation and events like this. So it's I wear a few different hats, but it's a lot of fun.
We all do that every now and again. Calvin took his off, but I put my quad hat on because it's good. The Quadra-Centennial is a good thing.
Gordy, where do you get one of those?
Somebody handed it.
You have to have worked in Champlain this past weekend. There's only a few dozen of these that exist.
Really? Yeah. Well, Calvin was all but the mastermind behind a major project.
No.
He was on the committee with a lot of people, but they all spent hundreds of hours preparing for a big project on Saturday in Champlain.
Oh, excellent.
And when it was all over, somebody handed us a couple of hats, and I wear mine proudly.
Absolutely.
Because the Quadra-Centennial, 400 years doesn't happen every 30 years.
No, it doesn't, and it's a great experience for us because we're building up to so many significant dates, bicentennials, centennials, relative to either the original canal system or the improved barge canal system, and so we're embarking on a period of 20 years or so of real significance. And so this Quadra-Centennial to us, it's a celebration. Yes, it's a commemoration of 400 years of maritime history and progress, but that continues. It's really a springboard for us for this project, and truly a legacy project moving forward. This is something we can take away from the Quadra-Centennial. Unlike the bicentennial barge, which sort of went away, faded away, this is just the beginning of this project, not the culmination of the end. So we're looking forward to celebrating and commemorating many different events and occurrences for years and years to come.
And maybe if people are watching this up and down this great corridor that involves New York State, maybe it'll stop at your town sometime.
Maybe.
If not this year, maybe in the years to come.
Yes, absolutely. And we're here in Plattsburgh. We're going to have an excellent couple days. We're going to be back down in Crown Point and for a public tour, and back down in Whitehall, and of course on the other side of the lake in Burlington. So we're very, very excited to be up on Lake Champlain and sort of turning a few heads. And we do look forward to coming soon to a theater near you.
I love it, John.
Is the phrase.
I love it, John. Thanks so much. You're a great guy.
Gordy, thank you. Great to have you aboard. And now let me show you around a little more.
We'll do it.
Okay.
Okay, there's a reprise. We pushed the on button again because John was giving us such a great piece of canal history when we shut the camera off, and we determined that it would be important to let people know that we talk about dreams. The dreams for canals in New York State go back a very long time. Just, tell us a little bit of that history you were just telling us.
Well, they do, and of course I always tell people anything I don't know, Gordy, I'm happy to make up.
You got it. Fill in wherever you want to.
But it was really it does go back a long way, and it's so intertwined with the history of the rest of the state, and again that legacy of the explorers in Champlain and Hudson 400 years ago that were looking for that way west. That dream didn't die. People still continue to imagine, how are we going to do this? And one of the first documented concepts comes in 1700 when Robert Livingston, the colonial governor of New York, wrote the Earl of Bellamont to advocate for a series of improvements, internal improvements within New York State, improve waterways for the purpose of trade. And that concept sort of bubbles for a while, and you see Christopher Coles, an Irish immigrant in the late 18th century, start to ruminate with a little more detail about
with a lot more detail,
what sort of waterway would be required and what the potential benefits would be. And then just around the 1800s, you start to see people like Gouverneur Morris and Isaac Eddy come on the scene and really advocate for waterways. And one of the reasons for that is that in 1792, General Philip Schuyler of Revolutionary War fame had begun a company called the Western Inland Lock Navigation Company to privately construct. By the way, he also formed the Northern Inland Lock Navigation Company, but he didn't get that off the ground. But as far as the Western Inland, they did actually construct several locks. They constructed a flight near Little Falls, and that began to demonstrate the viability of internal improvements in a real serious way. So in 1807, now we have a real quantum leap forward in the planning for the canal with an imprisoned flour merchant who was in debtor's prison at the time named Jesse Hawley.
What a story.
Yeah, he had been a flour merchant out of Rochester, and he'd gone under and owed a lot of people a lot of money. And one of the reasons for that is he did not have an efficient, economical way to get his product to the major markets. And so in 1807, he leaves the state, he's on the lam, and he writes one essay which appears in a Pittsburgh, the Commonwealth, I believe is the name of the paper, in Pittsburgh, PA, where he's on the lam. And that is the first of 14 essays. The other essays, he returned to New York State. He took care of his business, and his business at the time was to go to jail. Yeah. So he's in prison, and he proceeds under a pen name, Hercules, I believe it was.
Come on.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
To write 13 more essays, laying out in incredible detail what the canal's impact would be, how to build it, where the connections would be. And those appeared in the Genesee Messenger. And a lot of people read those essays, started to think, there's something here. And in 1808, Assemblyman Joshua Foreman in the New York State Legislature, he put forward the first resolution to appoint a canal commission and study the construction of what would become the Erie Canal. And in 1809, this is the bicentennial of another very important event. In 1809, Joshua Foreman goes to Washington to speak to President Jefferson about supporting, because President Jefferson in his annual message had talked about highways and canals. So Joshua Foreman figures, here's my guy. I'm going to go there. He's going to love this idea, and he's going to support the whole thing, and the feds will build it and pay for it. We'll be all set. Well, President Jefferson calls the idea a little short of madness. And he says, my good buddy George Washington's trying to build a canal on the Potomac, and and he's got his stuff together, and he's not doing too well. So go take a hike, pal. So Joshua Foreman comes back to New York State, and that is the moment it became determined that New York State would build this canal, this waterway, and they did. It was the most remarkable state public works project in the history of America. And it revolutionized not only New York, certainly, but our country, the whole world. I mean, it changed everything. It was the internet of 1825 when it opened. So, and immediately it was determined the canal had been built too small. They began the first enlargement in 1835, the second enlargement in 1895, which was never completed, and then began construction on the barge canal, which is the canal this magnificent beast was purpose-built for in 1905, and here we are today.
But isn't it amazing that this canal system tied it all together? I love your metaphor with the with the internet, because it certainly was. It connected things, and it was so far ahead of its time for the rest of the country when you think about it. And when you think, just because my Irish ancestors were involved in it, when you think of the back-breaking labor it took to complete that system.
It's amazing, Gordy. They did have some very clever early mechanical technological improvements that they used, but it was basically dug by hand, and and the workers would get, the Irish immigrants would get 5 cents and a shot of whiskey a day, and that was it. I mean, and a lot of them died in the swamps of Montezuma digging the ditch, and it really is it's a great story for America and for the dream, the promise that America holds out, that shining city on a hill. I mean, these Irish immigrants came here, they dug a ditch, then they worked on that ditch, they raised families, those families raised families. It's all part of our heritage, so it's great to be a continuing part of that legacy, and it's true. The canal connected not just Albany to Buffalo, as the song says, but New York City to Duluth. Erie, Pennsylvania to London. I mean, it opened up. It was literally that Western Passage that Hudson had been searching for, and so many others. It just came along a couple hundred years later, but it was the way west, and it wasn't about connecting Buffalo to Albany, but rather the entire Midwest to the Atlantic seaboard. And it's the reason one major reason the North won the Civil War. It's a major reason that we evolved as one country rather than two or three. And the canal played such a pivotal role. It's the Forrest Gump of history. If you look any place,
I love it.
Any key moment in history, the canal played a role.
Yeah.
And so it's just really, really neat to be part of that tradition.
And many of these Irishmen with their strong backs and their families came over here, worked on the canal system, and then they settled down. That's why we have an Irish settlement road right here in Clinton County. They couldn't get any more land along this beautiful lake, so they were given land far off, several miles down out in the country, and they didn't mind. And so that's where the Irish heritage came from, working on the canal system, settling here and many other towns along the way.
Well, no question. Again, Gordy, I'm from Waterford, where the Irish still do a lot of settling. Every time they settle down into a bar stool, and I'm Irish, so I can say that.
Yeah,
I never cast aspersions, but no, it's true. I mean, it's such a proud tradition that we should be so proud that not just the Irish, but so many of the immigrants that came to this country literally built it up. The public works that we have, the great waterways, the great industrial centers, the great architecture and buildings. So many, when you look around at what's really special, what's really magical around the country, not just here in this absolutely gorgeous, magnificent body of water, is Lake Champlain, but everywhere. The impact of so many people that sought that American dream is readily accessible. So it's a wonderful thing.
Waterford should be proud to have you as their son, John. You've done a great job. We really appreciate it. Now we got to look around this wonderful craft.
Well, yeah, let's look around. And I just hope I'm admitted back into Waterford when I get home.
I'm pretty sure you will be.
Okay, good.
Thanks, John.
All right.
We've descended down into the hold, and who knows what kinds of things were packed into here over her long journeys up and down the canal.
You might not want to think too hard about that.
But lots of different things.
Yeah, certainly.
Including grains and coal and who knows what all. I love the, as you say, the juxtaposition between the day Peckinpaugh and the Little Falls in 1921. And were you aboard on this one?
Yes, I was, and I just want to tell you, you'll notice that the wheelhouse is a little wider in in 2005. I want to dispel the myth that they had to increase the size of the wheelhouse just to accommodate me.
I knew you were getting
that wheelhouse was expanded long before that. But you can see in the original configuration as the ILI 101 in 1921, the no safety railings first is probably one of the first things you notice. But the smaller wheelhouse, the hatches compartmentalized as they are now, but without the self-unloading apparatus that emerged later. And other than that, not too terribly different in appearance. Different paint scheme, but she's not too terribly different than her 1921 configuration. But as you mentioned, Gordy, she was a dry bulk hauler. And again, the goal of building this ship was to avoid having to unload in Buffalo on the canal boats. They said, let's build a boat that's going to be able to run from Duluth, Minnesota, right down to New York Harbor and unload. And this was that. So she was built essentially as a mini Laker. If you look at those Great Lakes ships, compartmentalized, forward wheelhouse, built to essentially be just a barge canal version of that. So as you see today, if you look around, the bulkheads between the individual cargo holds has been eliminated. This was part of the conversion to a self-unloading cement hauler, but also gives us this great space, this tremendous venue, sort of a cathedral of maritime industrial history right down here. And we've got these great interpretive displays. We've got some other pictures of our exploits and adventures in the past. And it's just a wonderful space. So you can imagine kids coming down here doing interactive learning how to make rope fenders, toss lines, do all sorts of things, classroom environment, concerts, storytelling. This is just a great space, and it's so authentic. You really get, as you look down the length of the hold, you really get the sense of what this thing was meant to do, which was carry cargo efficiently to where it needed to get. And we forget so often today that just because we don't see the barges going by the house, we don't see the barges up on the lake, but everything you use in your daily life, from shampoo to razor blades to sneakers, at some point that's been on a ship. And it's probably been on a container on a ship now, but maritime transportation is very much a part of our everyday lives. It's contextual. So we want to paint a portrait of that connection, not just the interconnectivity that the waterways precipitated, but how we're still all connected by the waterways. The people here in Plattsburgh have a kinship with the people in Buffalo. The people in New York City have a kinship with the people in Waterford, New York, and it's all really still linked together. And that comes with issues as well, as we're finding out more and more as we look at the AIS issue. But I'm confident that we can continue to maintain these vital connections and still address what are some serious challenges lying ahead.
And we're so close to the big port of Montreal.
Yeah.
You talk about your container ships.
Yes.
Offloaded onto tractor trailers through the border, like to the tune of billions of dollars worth of product coming across just the Champlain border crossings alone every year.
No question.
Over in the western part of the state.
No question.
We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the opening of the St. Lawrence Seaway.
Yeah.
And I was just talking with another friend up above about we love to camp on the St. Lawrence River because I helped to work on construction building that seaway. It got me through college in the 50s. And then you come back and watch those ships that are a little bit longer than the day Peckinpaugh,
just
very close to 900 feet going by, but it's commerce, and it is still working.
No, it's all still there, and waterways evolve. The floating stock used on those waterways evolve. If you were to build a day Peckinpaugh style vessel today, you would build it differently. But that's the beauty of maritime history and progress. It's part of a continuing legacy. So here we are today telling one piece of the story. You have the Lois McClure over there telling another piece, the tug urger. It all fits together. And 100 years from now, there'll be one of today's vessels. They'll be looking at a tractor tug saying, wow, this is how they used to do it.
Isn't that amazing? Had you seen the Lois McClure before you came here?
Yes, I was involved with the Lois McClure in 2007.
No kidding.
When they did the Grand Canal journey. So it was a privilege to work with
great craft, isn't it?
Eric Tishnick
yeah.
and everybody. Yeah, terrific. And they're terrific people. They tell a really good story, and they do it in a very compelling way. So that's just a tremendous effort that the Lake Champlain Maritime.
So this hold is now a schoolroom, a wonderful schoolroom, a hands-on schoolroom, if you will. And thank God there are people like you to interpret along the way. And I can tell you enjoy the history part of it, don't you? You really love it.
I do, and but I also like, especially with the kids, I like the idea of bringing the circus to town. I mean, we're the proverbial elephant walking down Main Street, and when kids pull up here in their car or walk down and they say, wow, look at that, look at the size of it. That's the first wow, but when they come down, and you just heard one just now,
yes,
as they come down the stairway, then you get the second wow, invariably, and that's very exciting. You really get a sense of the scope, the size, the massive dimensions that we're dealing with here, and that gets kids thinking. It gets kids thinking a lot more than they would if they open a history book or they hear a lesson in a classroom. And here it is in living color, in real life. They can touch it. It's visceral, and they can be engaged by history in a way that I don't think is possible any other ways.
Nothing against Disney World or Disneyland, but as we mentioned to Gene upstairs, what a way to take a vacation with your family than to run through the whole canal system just to see what's left, because many people viewing this don't know these little towns and these segments of the canal still exist.
No question, Gordy. I mean, the Erie Canal was New York's original Main Street. It's still there. It still connects some of these magnificent and eclectic canal communities all across the state. There are self-skippered charter boats that you can rent. Sleep a family of 6 or 7 comfortably. I've done it with my kids. And it is just the best way to really see some of the hidden gems of this region, of upstate New York, of the Northeast, to hop on a canal boat or your own boat and cruise the canals of New York State. Unlock the past and just sort of engage history in a way that you're not going to be able to elsewhere.
And up until the late 19th century, there were almost 900 miles of canals in New York? 800?
Yeah, just under 900 if memory serves. There were at one point 8 or 9 lateral canals, and we're left with 4. But they have some very important connections. The Champlain, Cayuga, Seneca, Oswego, and of course the Erie. So Cayuga Lake, Seneca Lake still accessible. Lake Champlain, you can take the Chambly and get right down on the St. Lawrence after that. You can get all the way down, of course, to New York Harbor and beyond, the whole eastern seaboard. You can do the mini loop up through Champlain and down the St. Lawrence, up the St. Lawrence rather, and back up the Oswego. You can take the Western Canal to Buffalo. Sort of the whole state is connected by the canal system. So I would encourage people, if you haven't gotten out and checked it out, it's terrific, and it's still all there. It's a piece of history, but it's still relevant, it's still active, and it's alive.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's alive.
It's alive.
Okay, let's move along.
Okay.
John, when we first saw the Lois McClure, when it was finished and did our first tours, it was amazing to me how people brought their families along. This was personal enterprise for these families who lived and ate and even procreated aboard these canal boats, and it became a whole different ball game, as you said, in the days of even before the day Peckinpaugh.
Sure.
When you made the whole trip.
Sure.
Not just up and down Lake Champlain, for example.
Well, it's a very interesting point, and the fact of the matter is, as you say, it was routine for families in in the 1800s to own a canal boat or two. The whole family went on the boat. The kids were raised on the boat, and they may go to school in a public school in the winter when they were tied up, probably in New York Harbor, but otherwise they'd be tethered to a rail or something so they didn't fall over the side, and they'd have their playthings aboard, and that was the life for a canal boat family. And with the transition from the mule-drawn era canals to the barge canal, you saw the end of an era in that sense, a way of a life for many people who continued, in many cases, living on their canal boats well into the 1920s or 30s,
Sure.
well after the mule-drawn era canals were a thing of the past, because they'd never known any other way. It was, in the same sense, the canal, the barge canal, bypassed a lot of the smaller communities, all with their little docks. You had a lot of the same impacts on canal families who perhaps tried to get into the tugboat industry, didn't make it, or just could not make the transition. And you had larger companies now coming in, some excellent companies, running canal barges and tugboats designed and built specifically, as this boat was, for the new barge canal. So there is an interesting story there. And as far as the dimensions of the boats, for instance, the Lois McClure could fit in this hold where we're standing right
Sure.
now. And so that gives you an idea of, and I suppose, like progress, like anything else, it's inevitable. Things are going to get bigger, engines are going to get more powerful, technology is going to play a role, and things are going to evolve. And what you see here is the evolution of a canal boat. Lois McClure to Dave Peckinpaugh, and there'll be something else down the line. But we are standing in a key pivotal moment in that progression in history right now. But it's an interesting thing to point out how that way of life did sort of come to a close at the end of the 19th century with these canal boat families. They did not make the transition to larger vessels like this.
How did she handle coming up the lake, by the way? I didn't ask you that.
She
I asked
loved it.
Frank, and he said it took me a while to get used to it.
Well, if I just figured Frank was trying to carve his initials into the lake.
Yeah, he told me something about a wake like a sick snake or something.
Yeah,
I don't
something
know.
like that. She handled great. She likes the deep water. She made.
How much does she draw?
8 feet at the stern.
No kidding.
We're always in trim to be underway. Loaded, she would have drawn 12 feet, but she handled very, very well. Very, very well. Happy to be in deep water and make a little extra speed.
How many different kinds of craft have you piloted over your interesting career?
A couple ships in the Coast Guard and
Good size ships?
Not terribly big, and half dozen or so tugs and the Dave Peckinpaugh. So
Tugs are fun.
Yeah, tugs are fun. Tugs are fun. A bad day on the water is better than a good day anywhere else, we usually say. But I've had some bad days on the water that were pretty bad. So tugs are fun, and being on the water is always fun until something goes wrong and you got to take care of it. Because when you're on a boat with a crew, that's your universe. Nobody else is going to help you fix anything.
A good point. It was for those families you're talking about, and for guys like you too.
You better save the skin of the gal or the guy next to you, because nobody else is going to save yours. So it's a delight. It's really a privilege to be underway on a boat like this. A privilege to be up here on Lake Champlain, part of the Quadra-Centennial, and we couldn't be happier with the way things are going.
Thanks, John. Just because I'm hanging over the wheel here doesn't mean I have any idea what it's supposed to do, but I know I can grasp it with this hand.
It's fairly intuitive.
Yeah, sure it is.
Turn it left, turn it right, and you get the hang of it.
Just watch out for that boat.
You want to take her out?
Yeah, no, not really. But I have been in Frank's boat. You never saw Frank's boat on the lake, have you?
Oh, I've seen
Juniper.
I've seen the Juniper. Yeah.
Yeah, Frank had an awful lot of fun, especially with the booze cruises late at night.
I have no quite.
Had a lot of good dinners and a lot of good dancing, a lot of great music. And speaking of music, John, the canal system in New York State and Lake Champlain and the St. Lawrence River, the stuff that legends are made out of, music, the great folk music and history, all the songs we learned as little kids having to do with the canal system. Yeah. It's preserved, those memories are preserved in many ways, aren't they?
Oh, it's part of the great oral tradition, the storytelling and the music and camaraderie that was really part of life aboard a boat. And so that's part of that tradition, as you said before.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about what people are looking at in here.
Well, this is the wheelhouse. This is where we steer. You see, we've got just a typical large wooden helm. It's mechanical steering back to the engine room, and at that point it runs a hydraulic motor for the steering.
It does, okay.
And you see the throttle controls just to your right. Those are direct cable to the engines. And we also have the engine order telegraph as a backup there. You see, if we lose one of the cables, we can signal the engineer in the engine room as to
that. Yeah, how many times have we seen those in great old movies, right?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think I'm in a great old movie.
Yeah, I think maybe you are.
So yeah, absolutely. And so what you see is what you get. It's low tech. It's not altogether different from what you would have had up here in 1921. And the saga continues. We
I
have
don't
the
know if
basics.
this was because of a real tall guy or for some other reason, but we do have a small hole in the ceiling.
We're still under construction here. The spotlight control would have come through
Is
there.
that it? Yeah.
And the boat ran mainly the improved or a larger part of the barge canal from Oswego to Waterford in its later life. So there were a lot of appurtenances and other things that appeared above the level of the wheelhouse roof. We've taken most of that stuff off in order to go do the Western Canal, the Champlain Canal. So we have very, very tight clearance on some of the bridges, as you can imagine.
I bet you do. How tight?
The last bridge on the Champlain Canal, we had about 4 inches.
Oh, dear God.
Yep, so
Did you say, I wonder if we got something wrong here as you approach?
No. You do the math ahead of time.
Sure you do.
You measure twice, cut once. I mean, you do all your homework, and then you hope for the best.
That's what they do when the big semis get caught underneath those Northway bridges, right, Calvin?
There's no rear view mirrors here.
No rear view mirrors.
That's it. You're supposed to know where you've been, right?
Exactly.
I love the spelling for searchlight over here, SERCHLITE.
Well, they didn't have spell check in
No,
1921.
they didn't.
So
Thank God we have it now.
roger that.
So did it take you a little while to get a handle on this?
Oh yeah,
Control?
well, and I still am. Of course, if the minute you think you've stopped learning when you're running a boat is time to get off the boat, because you're always learning something. Every day is your first day. You always have to pay attention, and this is just a great opportunity to be aboard this great.
Well, since I started doing this program with Calvin 12 years ago, and long before that, on the radio, I use the word passion a lot.
Yeah.
And if it's never applied to anybody I've ever interviewed in my life, it applies to you.
I appreciate
And
that,
if
Gordon.
you've obviously followed a lot of your passions, and that's why you're here. But I pity people who don't or can't, because every day, you said it's a learning experience.
Sure. Well, it's great. Again, it's not only a privilege, but just very fortunate to do something that, as you say, I'm passionate about and I enjoy very much. And most people don't have that luxury. So every day I come to work is exciting, is new, and it's just an honor.
Even though the Day Peckinpaugh may not be equipped to handle 30-foot waves in the ocean, she can handle some pretty rough seas, even empty, right?
Yeah, I mean, she got some pretty good stuff on the lakes, and certainly ran the coast during World War II. During the East
Well, that's
Coast.
true too.
So-
Yeah, I never thought about it. Yeah,
So-
you mentioned that service.
So she's seen some water in her day, and fortunately not this trip.
Yeah. Well, Lake Champlain can be nasty.
Yeah,
In case you haven't noticed, when the south wind blows.
we're watching the weather very carefully.
Yeah. Well, we're okay here today, and when we started our program an hour or so ago, it was a little bit rough. Calvin said, I didn't pick the perfect parking place. His front tires are underwater in the parking lot. But what a pleasure it is to be here today and with you, John. This is a great learning experience for me, and I've loved every minute of it.
Gordy, we've loved having you aboard, the whole crew, and we're so happy you've come and been able to visit with us and swap some sea stories with us and learn a little bit more about the boat and its relevance up here on Lake Champlain. And we hope to have you back, and we hope to see you up here in Plattsburgh again.
You're welcome to come back here anytime with or without the Peckinpaugh.
Great. I'll take you up on that.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Gordy.
Well, what would we ever do without Google Earth? I'll tell you that. Look at this. This will show you what a satellite view of this part of our great and unique part of North America is all about. This map showing you the St. Lawrence River, Lake Champlain, the Hudson River, all the way down to New York City. And even though the states and territories aren't delineated, you can tell just about where New York is, and you can see Long Island jutting out into Long Island Sound. The face of this area has changed a great deal since the Ice Age, for example. But without that canal system, the progress in New York State would never have occurred at the pace that it did. So I hope you've learned as much as we have today. This is pretty neat. I never cease to be amazed at how well these people could map things that they really hadn't seen. And Samuel de Champlain was a cartographer, geographer, and explorer, and what is called the father of New France. And that map you're looking at was published in 1612, a map of what he called New France, based on speculation, based on his own explorations of the Atlantic coast, the St. Lawrence River, Lake Champlain, and Henry Hudson's reports of the great tidal river to the south, as well as descriptions by Champlain's Indian allies of great freshwater seas to the west. Pretty fantastic when you stop to think about it. He was also a journalist, so everything he did, he was very careful to write down. And some of those journals were lost, but some things were preserved. He was also a pretty darn good artist when you stop to think about it. All the warriors that were said to have led Champlain's party to the lake, it says to avenge long-standing wars with the Mohawks. This was at Ticonderoga, for example. Champlain was fascinated by the native people of North America in many ways. He liked their hunting and trading skills. The people who lived in the mountains. I don't know if he ever learned any of their languages, although he was a very intelligent man, and that's why we call him the father of New France, because of the skills that he had in talking about what he had done and making the maps of it. And that's a long, long time ago. It's significant that we're now celebrating the Quadra-Centennial. That's 400th anniversary of his trip down through the Lake Champlain region and his voyages of discovery in 1609. And then there was Henry Hudson, and he is a part of the story. His maps and a replica of his ship called the Half Moon. In those days, Halvemen, plying the river and coastal waters. That was also 400 years ago, and as we mentioned earlier in our program today, he was scouting the American coastline for as far south as Virginia for the watery path through the mountains. He was the English explorer working for the Dutch East India Company, and he sailed north up a tidal river, and 3 weeks later he ended up near what is now called Albany. And so these two great discoverers, these two great guys, came very close to meeting each other 400 years ago, but as far as we know, they never actually met in person. So the English took over the area called New Netherland in 1664, renamed the colony New York, and there are a lot of Dutch place names, building types, still marking the Hudson Valley today. And my own ancestors, the French Huguenots on my mother's side, settled in 1678 down near what was Tarrytown, and has now been dubbed Sleepy Hollow because of the famous Washington Irving tale. And this is a topic we've talked about often on our little corner in Calvin and many other shows in the past, because for a long time after Samuel de Champlain and Henry Hudson first visited these waterways here in New York State, not only were these waterways, the paths for commerce, but they were also the paths of and the places for some tremendous battles, as we know. The battles of the 7 Years French and Indian War, the American Revolution, our War of 1812 that we fought so much, we talk so much about up here every year, offering a direct route between French, later English Canada, and English, later U.S. New York. This river and this lake provided pathways for raiding parties and massive troop columns, and you know a lot of the stories, and thank goodness to the fact that we got on our little horse and took some tours. You know the stories of places like Ile-aux-Noix, Crown Point, Ticonderoga. We haven't covered the Hudson Highlands in New York City yet, but who knows, we might end up in Waterford one of these years. This is a perfect example here. Some of the key places from Montreal, Chambly, Valcourt, Plattsburgh, Crown Point, Ticonderoga, all the way down through to Saratoga, the famous other Fort Montgomery, West Point, Stony Point, Harlem Heights, and all the way down to Brooklyn.
How do I do it? What do I like?
Well, we've been trying to catch Ryan Steiniger since we got here, but he's been busy up and down and all around.
All over the place.
What
yeah.
are you doing here this weekend? It's great to have you here, by the way.
Basically, I'm just explaining the functions of the boat, what we're all about with the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor, and how that relates to the Quadra-Centennial celebration as well. So we're basically giving a lot of information out and telling people about the day Peckinpaugh.
So what have you got a title?
I'm a seasonal park ranger for the Erie Canal.
There you go.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
Yep.
How long have you done that?
I've done it for 3 summers. It's been great.
Is it good?
Yep.
Just in the summertime?
Summertime, yep, and I'm a teacher on the outside as
No
well.
kidding.
So,
Where?
yep.
High school?
Middle school, high school, a
Where?
little bit of everything. Capital Region Boces.
Kidding. Well, that's great. I should have known you were. Isn't it fun to answer the little kids' questions?
Oh,
with Grandma
exactly.
and Grandpa?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good time.
We've been touring the boat with John.
Yep.
We've talked with many other people connected with this project. It's kind of an amazing and wonderful thing.
It is.
Stand here and know that if it hadn't been for the foresight and the dreams
Absolutely.
and a whole bunch of stimulus money,
Exactly.
that this thing would be on the scrap heap down in Erie, PA.
Yep, a lot of people helped out, worked together and pulled together, and it was a lot of teamwork to get it up and running, but they've done a fantastic job. I'm glad to be a part of it.
How long ago did you know you were going to be up here for this project?
I knew at the beginning of the summer, or end of last summer actually,
you
when
did?
they said, yep, I've helped give little tours here and there when it was based in Cohoes. They open it for a day or so, and I'd go down and help out. But I knew about this last summer and knew I'd be a part and going on tour with it. So it's
We've been through a lot of buildings, historic buildings, and I've often said, what would we do if these walls could talk? But then you think about the day Peckinpaugh
It could
and
tell
all of its
stories.
various incarnations as it was built and commissioned in 1921, and its name was changed at least 3 times that I know about.
Yep.
And here we are, and it's still floating.
Yep,
And it's still telling stories thanks to people like you, Ryan.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to tell the story, and it's an honor to, if these walls could talk, I mean, they could keep you awake and running for a long time. They tell a lot of stories.
What's the hardest question anybody's ever asked you about this?
The basic ones that I don't really know off the top of my head. It's a lot of the engine questions that I don't know, and I'm not an engineer. Yeah, you gotta go talk to Captain Callahan. That's where I go.
Big motors. Yeah.
Go talk to Captain Callahan or Duncan Hay. They're a wealth of knowledge, and they bail me out of a couple.
Up in the pilot house, somebody said,
Yeah.
how fast can you go? And he said,
6 to 8 miles an hour. I know that one.
no speed demon here. right?
No, it's crept along slow and steady.
But it is a good old ship, and it does tell a story. Thanks to, I'll tell you,
Absolutely.
whoever chose all these photographs and set up this
Yeah, Duncan
to make it
was
an interpretive center.
Yeah, he does a fantastic job with them, and it's very informative. We've had some visitors wondering where they could get the information, and we've actually emailed emailed to them and the PDF files that they're all in, and so they can have their own copies.
Well, the Quadra-Centennial year is a special year for all the obvious reasons, but to have something like this happening as one of the really sterling events is really great.
Absolutely.
So you get to go to a lot of towns.
I do,
You may never be able to teach this fall.
I'm working around. The schedule's full, but I'm definitely working.
You're going to start work in a few weeks, don't you?
A couple weeks, yep. Yeah.
So you start, when'd you start? Back in May, June?
Basically May, June. That's where I go full time. Then I work some weekends while school's still going. So, and I'm also in the military as well too.
Are
so
you really?
I put on three hats for everybody. But my schedule is jam packed, but it's well worth it. I love what I do.
But you have a lot. Do you teach history, or what do you teach?
Special education.
Special ed. You have a lot of great stories for your kids this fall.
I will definitely.
Ryan, it's great to talk to you.
Very
Thanks
nice
so much
meeting you.
for taking time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good luck with everything.
Appreciate it.
See you later. Yeah, here's another great presentation as part of the interpretive museum, if you will, on the day Peckinpaugh, and this is talking about steam. We've had our own steamboats here up in Lake Champlain, and we like to think that they even predated the famous Fulton's Folly as it became known, but a couple of hundred years after Samuel de Champlain and Hudson did their thing on these waterways, there was steam on the river, and boy, and on Lake Champlain, and look what a difference it made in all those years. It says under that picture, by the 1870s, fast passenger steamers crowded for space with steam tugs and sailing craft, and the twisting channel through the Hudson River highlands and all the way up north. There were a lot of steamships on Lake Champlain, especially the passenger ships, which were pretty terrific.
On the TV.
Boy, there's a great view, a great painting that I have seen that painting before now that I look at it. It's a view on the Erie Canal by John William Hill from the New York Public Library, but it dates back to 1829. And a lot of this information John has given us already today, and it's pretty special when you think that the Erie Canal was completed in 1825, not that many years after the Battle of Plattsburgh, and our own Champlain Canal not too many years after that, or before that, in 1823. So it says the goods from Quebec and Eastern Ontario joined the flow after 1843, and that's the Chambly Canal, bypassing the rapids in the Richelieu River. And it's a wonderful story, and it kind of connects our whole state when you come to think of it, north, south, east, and west.
I'm learning a little bit here that there are a lot of offshoots. I thought we just went east-west and north-south, but there's a lot of little tributaries there that went off to the Genesee Valley and the Cayuga and the Finger Lakes and the Shenango Canal, and I see the Black River Canal. A lot of little canals that I wasn't really aware of in the past.
Yep, there are. John mentioned a few of those. Gene mentioned a few of those, and I knew about a couple, but not all of them. So that's great information.
We're back outside while Gordy's chatting. We're going to just take a look to show you the length of the day Peckinpaugh. It's a very long ship for this part of the waters.
Before we go 1 minute further into our program, I'd like to thank all those people who love history and find some way to preserve it, either like as Calvin does at Hometown Cable on the various networks, or people like those whom you've heard us interview today who insist on preserving it by learning it and teaching it to others, even if it's telling your kids about your trip down here to the Wilcox Dock on August 11th in 2009. We have the history. It gives us a great insight into where we are and where you're going if you learn that history. Talk about history, the Lois McClure is not an original but it's about as close as you can get, folks, without being there. And it is an experience in itself. If you ever get an opportunity to go aboard, you will certainly get the flavor of what it was like to live aboard these personally owned ships, cargo ships of their day, sailing ships on Lake Champlain and the Canal system. Lois McClure is very typical of the boats that plied Lake Champlain all over the place 100 years ago. And the tugboat, the Urger, is behind us, and we're going to take a look at that and have a kind of a overall view of what's happening with this sailing, floating flotilla here.
Well, it's a great time, a great opportunity for people to learn about our rich canal history in and around New York State. Most canal boats were barge-type boats where they were pushed by
the
tugboats, and you don't see sails on the majority of the barge canal boats. And of course, they had no power at all. They were just dependent on somebody pushing them along. And of course, that's when something like the day Peckinpaugh came along that was self-propelled. It was certainly a big improvement. But things like the tugboat Urger, and probably around 94 or so in that era, this tugboat was refurbished and put back into service. And it came to Rouse's Point, and Bob Venn was busy that day, and the boat was there, so we had to do something. So Marty Picard grabbed the microphone.
No kidding, I
we
didn't
took a
know
tour
that.
of the tugboat Urger. So we haven't been on there in about 15 years, and it's nice to see it. And there's also another little tugboat that came along here too.
Yeah, the 8C, and that the 8C was Frank and another partner owned this tugboat for quite a while, way back when. So it's like old home week for Frank in so many ways to be down here. And like to thank all the people in the city of Plattsburgh and others who encouraged the refurbishing of this Wilcox Dock area, which was under a lot of disuse for so many years. It's nice to see it wide open, people putting boats in down here, and other folks coming down to make this tour in August 2009. It's great. Well, we felt the urge to check out the Urger. Jack Wright, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a much nicer day than it was when we first pushed the on button on that camera a couple of hours ago. So what brings you here?
Okay, we're here. We're part of the Quadra-Centennial working on the waters tour.
Isn't it great?
It is. It's great occupation.
A wonderful, wonderful company, and we've been getting a lot of the story about the day Peckinpaugh, and we've known about the Lois McClure, but tugs played a big role in the commerce up and down.
They certainly
east.
did. That's when the barge canal system in 1917 was rebuilt because of tugboats.
Yeah.
We didn't need to still water. We could run in currents and all with a tugboat and move bigger barges. That's why tugboats came in.
But so the Urger dates back to 1901, right?
Correct. Yep.
And it looks a lot better than it did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So they started a project to recoup and recover.
Yeah. After '85, should I hope?
No, that's fine.
Oh, in 1985, the boat was going to be retired, and actually it was through the efforts of a man called Schuyler Myers and the State Council of Waterways. He had the foresight to save the boat. He was using some of his own money, and we used it as an educational thing. In 1991, it went out about through the system and everything. And when Schuyler passed away, the Canal Corporation picked it back up, and they're now the stewards of the boat. It's the Canal Corporation, and they do a very nice job with it.
So it's actually been it was a working boat for years and years
till
and
1985. Yep, from 1922 to 1985.
Now it's a learning boat, right?
Now it's a learning. We do fourth grade education.
Yeah.
During the school year, the fourth graders will come in the spring. We'll do the eastern part of the state. In the fall, we do the western.
Yeah.
And we'll see 5,000 to 6,000 fourth graders during the season.
Isn't that amazing? And it's fun to
they
inspire
love
the
it.
little
Yes,
kids, isn't it?
They get a boat tour. I tell them about tugboats. We have another segment where we teach them the history of the canal. We have a little model lock that show them how a lock works. And then we have a new segment we started last year about water pollution, runoff water and everything. like that. And it's, you know, kids go home and they're happy. It's one of the best field trips they could get for a fourth grader.
People, kids and adults too, wonder how a tug this size can handle a great big barge.
Well, it's got a 5.5 foot propeller on it.
That'll
and it's
help.
8 feet deep in the water, so it's, you know, that makes a lot of thrust.
When did you get connected with it, Jack?
I ended up just recently. I had worked for the state, and I retired. You know, when I retired, this job came up, and I retired and went on this boat there and 4 years ago.
Oh, wonderful. Hold on, we're going to answer my telephone here. All right, we got our phone call answered. We're back with you, Jack. We're talking about fourth grade education. It's great to educate the young kids.
They are. The kids are great there, you know, and I mean, that's an age where they're, you know,
oh yeah,
they're
very curious,
very enthusiastic and everything.
Some of them answer questions that are a little bit off the wall.
Oh, we get a lot of those. Yeah. They do look forward to. That's a big trip there, you know, and we pretty much make every date we ever have too, you know, unless there's.
That's important too, isn't it?
Bad weather yet, because they look forward to that all year.
And
you
Calvin was just talking about the bumpers.
Yep, the fenders on it.
The fenders.
Yep.
And they're handmade.
From Manila line there.
No kidding. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
And we use those to, you know, modern tugs will use tires.
Tires, yeah.
This is the old way. Actually, the earlier ones, they just put sticks on there. You know, that was original fenders. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Well, you know, all scrap wood, and then, you know, throw it away and
that's
put
true
another
too.
one on.
I never thought of that. But the Urger was actually pushing barges around until the 80s?
1985, yeah. From 1922 to 1985, it was a workboat. They're actually pushing you know, we have very big dredges, you know, scows, rip-rap. So, you know, it always worked in the canal system on things like that. I'm sure it's probably made many trips to Plattsburgh there in this years.
Isn't that
it was based out of Waterford, and I would imagine it's, you know, made some trips besides the 91 trip it had. Yeah.
Surprised. We're delighted to have John and all the other crew from Waterford coming up here. So it kind of ties the state together, and it's perfect during this Quadra-Centennial year.
And the boat certainly likes Lake Champlain.
Does it really?
Yes, that deep water,
No
that, you know, it's nice and cool in the
Just let
engine,
her
and
go.
and she, you know, she just cruises
I
right
wonder
along.
if that's the original engine, or
No, the engine was repowered in 1947. It had a Montague single-cylinder steam engine. And in 1947, the engine we have in here is a 1930 Atlas Imperial.
No kidding.
Okay, and that was actually designed for minesweepers for the military. Okay,
Isn't that amazing?
So the military had this built. You know how they always get more parts than they need.
Yeah.
Never used, and in 1947 we bought it. It was a brand new engine, and we, you know, put it in, and it was amazing because it works well with the hull design. We still have the steam propeller, everything.
You still got the same propeller?
Yep.
You think that propeller's never been changed?
Never been maybe straightened, and
You think it has a few nicks in it, or?
There might be a few, yeah.
I had no idea until you told me. 5 foot?
5.5 feet in diameter.
5.5 feet in diameter?
Yeah.
Wow, that's truly amazing, isn't it?
It sure is.
Oh, that's great. So when did you first see this tug?
Oh, as a kid, I'd see it all the time.
Really?
Yeah, I'd see.
No kidding. Never dreaming that you'd end up on it?
I never thought I'd be doing this, no, but just, you know.
Isn't that incredible? But here you are.
Yeah.
You got it. When did you get your pilot's license?
3 years ago.
3 years ago?
3 years ago, yeah. I went to school, and, you know, I started out as a deckhand on a boat and learned to do it. Went and got my license, and
what a great way to spend. What a great way to spend your summer, son.
It is, yeah, certainly is.
Did you have another career before this?
Oh yeah, I was a teacher and a social worker prior to
come
this.
on.
Yes, I was.
Isn't that the best?
Yeah.
Well, and nobody's made you paint anything on it, right?
No, that's all we do is paint it. The water level up. It's
I was being facetious.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Jack, I think you're the best. We're so thrilled to have you up here today, and I know everybody's having
We're happy to be here. It's great that, you know, I mean, this part of the state doesn't get to see the boat. I mean, it's almost on the Erie now. Everybody kind of sees it every year. I'm glad that, you know, the rest of the state can see it, you know, get up here, and hopefully we'll be up again.
Do it. Thanks again, Jack.
Alrighty, thanks a lot.
Good to see you, buddy.
Take care.
We're so fortunate to have had the opportunity to come down to Wilcox Dock in Plattsburgh off Cumberland Avenue for this occasion and for any other occasion that we've attended over the past few years. If you haven't been here and you are in the area, come on down and visit. It has a wonderful history. If you don't know the history, just ask Helen and John Ionelli. I'll bet you they'll clue you in. It's been a special treat for me to be a part of all the Quadra-Centennial activities, but when it comes to things that have a whistle that goes toot-toot, things that have steam and sails and diesel engines, I love it. I don't know a great deal about it, but I've learned a lot today. I learned a lot before from our good friend Captain Frank, with whom we started our broadcast back during the rainy season of a few hours ago. But this has been special. We knew the day Peckinpaugh was coming, but we had no clue what it looked like until we got here today. And believe me, we were thrilled, and I hope you are vicariously through the eyes of Calvin's hometown cable camera. It's been a special pleasure to have the tugboats here, to meet the people who operate the tugboats, and everybody else who supported this activity from the beginning to the end. If you're within the sound of my voice and the sight of our camera, and you have an opportunity to take in some of the Quadra-Centennial events in your little town, community, or neighborhood, by all means take advantage of it, because as I said earlier in the show, Quadra-Centennials don't come around every 20 years, folks. So none of us will be around here to see another one. So enjoy it as you may. Teach your children well about the history of our tremendous state and our nation, and enjoy whatever season you're in when you watch this program. Thanks for supporting our program, for telling us what you'd like to see, for commenting about the shows that we've done in the past, and for sending those generous checks to Calvin to support the show. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.
On March 30th, 1792, the New York legislature passed an act for establishing and opening lock navigation within the state. Later that year, the state chartered the Western Inland Lock Company. Their goal was to create an uninterrupted water transportation route from the Hudson River to Lake Ontario. In 1796, they built the first canal locks ever in the United States to bypass Little Falls, New York. The company, however, was not financially successful, so in 1816, the New York legislature passed a law to establish a state-built canal. On July 4th, 1818, canal construction began in Rome, New York. 7 years and 363 miles later, the first passage through the canal from Lake Erie to New York City was possible. Not only did the canal bring people and prosperity to central New York, it led to many tales and songs of that era. One of those songs tells the tale of one canal boat's trip from Albany to Buffalo.
We were 40 miles from Albany, forget it, I never shall. What a terrible storm we had one night on the Erie Canal. Oh, the year I was a-rising and the gin was getting low, and I scarcely think we'll get a drink till we get to Buffalo, till we get to Buffalo. We were loaded down with barley, we were chock full up on rye. The captain, he looked down on me with his gosh darn wicked eye. With his gosh darn wicked eye. 2 days out from Syracuse, the vessel struck a shoal. We like to all be foundered on a Choccolackawanna coal. On a Choccolackawanna coal. Oh, the year I was a-rising and the gin was getting low, and I scarcely think we'll get a drink till we get to Buffalo, till we get to Buffalo. We hollered to the captain on the towpath treading dirt. He jumped aboard and stopped the leak with his old red flannel shirt. With his old red flannel shirt. The cook, she was a grand old gal. She wore a ragged dress. We hoisted her upon the pole as a signal of distress. As a signal of distress. Oh, the year I was a-rising and the gin was getting low, and I scarcely think we'll get a drink till we get to Buffalo. Till we get to Buffalo. The wind began to whistle, the waves began to roll. We had to reef our royals on the raging canal. On the raging canal. The captain, he got married. The cook, she went to jail. And I'm the only deckhand son that's left to tell the tale. That's left to tell the tale. Oh, the year I was a-rising and the gin was getting low, and I scarcely think I'll get a drink till we get to Buffalo. Till we get to Buffalo.
One of the traditional songs that traveled well was Derry Down. There are hundreds of versions of this ballad that have been adapted to various regions of the country. These Derry Down songs include the Ballad of Blue Mountain Lake, Red Iron Ore, and the Raging Canal. This is our adaptation, which we call Derry Down to Erie.
Come all you good fellas, wherever you be, come sit down a while and listen to me as I tell this tale to you one and all about the perils we had on the Erie Canal. Derry down, 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 Derry down, Derry down, 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 Derry down. We left Albany Harbor about the break of day. I remember it well, 'twas the 2nd of May. We trusted our driver even though he was small, for he knew all the windings of the Erie Canal. Derry down, 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 Derry down, Derry down, 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 Derry down. It seemed that the devil was working that night, for oil was gone and our lamps gave no light. The clouds began to gather and the rain began to fall. I wished I could get off of the Erie Canal. Derry down, 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 Derry down, Derry down, 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 Derry down. But sad was the fate of our poor devoted bark, for the rain was pouring faster and the night it grew dark. The horses gave a stumble and the driver gave a squall, and they all tumbled into the Erie Canal. Derry down, 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 Derry down, Derry down, 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 Derry down. The captain came on deck, his voice clear and sound, crying, "Cut the horses loose, so we surely will drown." The driver swam the shore, yes, he answered the call, but the horses sank to the depth in the Erie Canal. Derry down, 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 Derry down, Derry down, 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 Derry down. So be careful when you're traveling out to Buffalo. Keep close to the shore and watch where you go. Especially around the city of Little Falls, or we'll have another tale of the Erie Canal. Derry down, 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 Derry down, Derry down, 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 Derry down, Derry down, 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 dairy, down, dairy, down. Down, down, dairy, down.
When the canal was first built, it divided many farms. Anyone who owned land on both sides of the canal had the right to have a bridge built to reconnect their property. New York State ended up building over 300 such bridges. To save money, many of the bridges were built just high enough to let boats pass, with 18 to 24 inches to spare. This created havoc for the canal packet boats. The packet boat was a nicely painted craft, about 75 feet long, and was for passengers only. During pleasant weather, the passengers spent their time outside the cabin. The main deck, which was the roof of the cabin, was the favorite place for the men and daring women. The passengers would sit on stools or low chairs. Whenever the boat approached a bridge, the steersman would cry, "Bridge." That was the signal for men and women to duck their heads and perhaps even to kneel. However, if the bridge was too low and there wasn't time to get to the lower deck, people would be lying prone on the deck or hanging over the side of the boat until they had passed the bridge. Thus, the cry, "Low bridge," became symbolic with travel on the Erie Canal.
I've got a mule and her name is Sal, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. She's a good old worker and a good old pal, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. We've hauled some barges in a day, filled with lumber, coal, and hay. We know every inch all the way from Albany to Buffalo. Low bridge, everybody down. Low bridge for coming to a town. And you'll always know your neighbor, you'll always know your pal, if you've ever navigated on the Erie Canal. We better be on our way, old pal, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. You bet your life I never part with Sal, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. Get up here, mule, there comes the lock. We'll make Rome about 6 o'clock. One more trip and back we'll go, right back home to Buffalo. Low bridge, everybody down. Low bridge for we're coming to a town. And you'll always know your neighbor, you'll always know your pal, if you've ever navigated on the Erie Canal.